Okay. We've told you how it all works. You know how it all works, don't we? Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we just wing it then?
Yeah. It'll be fine. Like Braden, I said to Joel, I'm a bit like a goldfish.
Yeah.
It's like I forget pretty quickly, so this could all feel quite new.
That's me with every podcast I've ever recorded.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome back to the Chip Lunch podcast. I said that last week and you're like, who's that? And I found that I wanted to show you who does it. He says,
Hello, hi, how are you?
hello, hi, how are you? That's where I got it from.
So not an original thought.
Of course not. I'm a synthesizer.
Synthesizer. Just a reflector.
Play my keys. Welcome, how are you, Braden?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to have a new guest.
Yeah.
If anyone's wondering, it is Lorelei, and for us it's again, but praying to God that this audio works, because it did not work last time we had her on.
The lost episode.
That is a true lost episode, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. The bootleg will come out in 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, that someone's found and yeah. It's they've ripped it out of the studio and sent it out onto the internet.
Yeah, they've used that audio trick they had to use in the Peter Jackson Beatles documentary to split the audio.
Oh, did they?
And used AI to recreate all that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I look forward to that.
We'll talk to it when the budget gets a bit bigger.
You got a bit of free time, Lorelei. Maybe it's a new skill you can learn. Welcome
Thanks.
to the Chip Lunch podcast. It's
Nice
great
to
to
be
have you
here.
on. We just had a bit of a dry run last time, so
Yeah, we
this
did.
is the full
Yeah.
episode.
Dress rehearsal.
Yeah, we had dress rehearsal. I feel like you're
Matinee.
probably more comfortable. Matinee. You call it
maybe.
matinee performance?
Yeah, maybe a matinee.
Okay.
It went quite well. I'd say
I
it's
thought it was-
above
it
dress
was-
rehearsal.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh.
I see why you're saying that.
Yeah.
I would agree. I enjoyed myself very much the last time we did
I
this.
enjoyed myself. I think that's a bad
That's a great
gauge.
conversation.
It was, wasn't it? But you said the mistake was maybe God had his hand on the scenario.
Yeah,
Do you want to tell us why you thought that was the case? Doesn't have to be in great detail, but
Yeah, I just having the opportunity to sit down with you both and actually kind of talk about some stuff, reminisce on, life, journey, etc. It's been a while since I've had the space or the time to do that. And so I walked away really encouraged, but also really challenged and convicted about some stuff, which no doubt will come out through our conversation today. So I kind of feel like, it was a blessing to have been able to have that time and have that conversation. I think God is funny that the audio didn't work. And I think that there was probably something in that. I think today's conversation might look a little bit different.
I think it will. But I genuinely appreciated when I called you. Was it last week? And it said, hi. And you're on the train. I'm
Yeah,
oh gosh, at least she can't rip me too much if she's on the train. What are you doing? You idiot.
Wow.
And you basically laughed the whole time.
Yeah.
So I would appreciate you having such a great approach to me. I think it was me stuffing up. And as we said, it was probably the first time in maybe 400 recordings that we'd stuffed up the audio.
Yeah.
So,
I think
Yeah.
it's funny. Anyway.
hitherto, I read that in a Winnie the Pooh book last night with my kids. Hitherto, Lorelei, how do you like to eat your hot chips?
How do I like to eat hot chips? So I like fat, thick chips, extra cooked. So I do have to ask for extra cooked.
Thrice cooked,
yes.
please.
And I'm chicken salt all the way. If I'm just eating hot chips,
Yeah.
I can lean towards plain salt if it's chips are an accompaniment to something else. But no, I'm a chicken salt all the way.
Yeah. Chicken salt's just for a chips thing, isn't it? It doesn't really play well with others.
No, it doesn't play well with others.
So what you're saying is the
Chicken
thing
salt
that
and
you
carrots.
the thing that you guys choose, they're not team players.
No, we're just picking something that goes well with chips and only chips. So it makes sense to make that choice when you're presented with chips.
I disagree.
Really?
What is it like?
I thought you had seen the light for a second.
it
Saw on
makes
the
me
road
think
to
of-
Damascus. Like, oh, it's clicked.
The
scales.
It's taken 100. It's taken.
chicken salt all the way.
Yeah, it's taken 114 episodes or whatever. And Lorelei twice.
I was trying to think of what a version of scales are being removed from my eyes, but making a mouth version. The only thing I could think of was a COVID mask. I don't want to tell you that. I don't know what it would be. No, I can't think of it. No, sorry. Lorelei, you were saying earlier that it takes a lot to make you laugh. So I was trying really hard to think of something.
It does take a lot.
Now, I do know for the previous episode there was
Yes.
a very specific place that
In
you
the-
like to get the chips
Is,
from.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my
Please.
favourite place for hot chips is Kelly Road Chips.
I was trying to remember the
Um,
street name.
Yeah,
It's like,
so that's in Adelaide because that's where I grew up. And so when I actually think of hot chips, like that brings back a lot of childhood memories because we would go to church. The chicken and chip shop was next door to church. so
that's
like
such good.
my sister and I would go to the chip shop and Dad would swing around and pick us up from there.
Oh, you went and ordered it?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Dad, I'll get
would,
the car.
Yeah, Dad would come past and pick us up.
Was he aggressive, out the front, hurry up, beep?
No.
Or he's just like chill? He's been at
Dad's
church.
pretty chilled,
Is he?
laid back.
That's good.
And then we'd go home and have hot chips and watch the Sunday movie and
Yeah.
lay on the couch for Sunday afternoon.
Is there a Sunday movie that you remember, that you remember watching and eating chips at the same time?
No, I think I just more remember that they were all like the old movies. So it was like literally the Sunday movie. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't like, I am a little bit older. It's not like
You were just
it was not like you were putting on Netflix and you could pick.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course. yeah.
You got what you were given.
And you got the ads too.
And you got the ads.
Bull.
Yeah. So there's probably not one that stands out, but all the old fashioned ones where, they're dancing and
Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind.
That was exactly what popped into my head.
Really?
Yeah,
when I
that
think
would have
of
been in
that.
there.
As soon as I thought of that, do you know the video game Tekken?
Yes.
There's a character. There's like a dinosaur character called Gon, and one of his special moves was Gone with the Wind, and it
Wind.
was just a fart.
That's hilarious.
It was just this rank green cloud that came out of. Sorry.
Yeah, funny. No, there you go.
Every time I hear Gone with the Wind, that's what I think
Yeah.
of.
Yeah,
the
that would
Wind.
have been in there.
Sound of Music.
Sound of
Sound of
Music is the next one I
Music.
thought
That
of.
one might
Bit
have
of
been
Marilyn
too long.
Monroe, like
Oh.
old movies.
Casablanca.
Yeah, Casablanca, that kind of era of
That's
the Sunday
all the way
movie.
back to black and white. Casablanca.
That's how culturally significant I am.
Because you're that old.
I knew there was an old joke coming. And I'd like you to know that I want you to respect your elders. And while we may be an intergenerational church, I am also far more experienced in life than you are.
Spring, shock absorber, resiliency and strength.
I was just trying
Like
really,
an old oak.
I was just trying really hard to be like a mature age student at uni. Like, I have life experience, and
You'd be
I'm going
sitting
to
in
ask
the
a
front
really
row and you'd have
Yep.
a notebook out.
And I'm asking a really important question that everyone needs to hear me ask, because you know what? I didn't go to uni straight after school. I went to the School of Hard Knocks.
Tell us what you really think
Come
about it,
from
Joel.
us.
But you know what? I made Lorelei laugh, so that's all that matters.
Yay. Yay.
So Kelly Road Chips.
Kelly Road Chips.
What kind of road is this? Is it like sadly? Well, the reason I'm asking that question is the thought that I had was like it's like a Wild West town with like the churches on one side, and then there's the bar with those swinging doors, and then there's the chip shop. And you walk across the dirt road.
No.
Your dad brings up a cart and horse.
Yeah, well, that's what
So
I was
I'm not that old.
you were thinking like, wow, Adelaide, what kind of road is it? Was it paved yet? Like,
I don't know. I
That's
feel
true.
like when I've gone to Adelaide, it's about 10 years behind the rest of
Well, that-
the eastern seaboard.
That is definitely true.
Yes.
No, normal road.
No,
Had the shop. Had the
bitumen
shops.
or concrete. That's
Had the shops across the road.
yeah.
okay.
Actually, our church was a old roller skating rink.
Oh,
What?
really?
Yeah. Anyway, random stories. But yes, no, normal church on the chip shop on the corner. Across the road was the shops, supermarket. Eventually, a video store went in across the road. So then we upgraded from the Sunday movie to kind of
Yeah.
getting to go and pick up
Yes.
video.
Would
Yeah,
you like
big deal.
order the chips, then go into the video shop, and then come back and get your chips?
No,
You weren't that efficient.
we would take too long in the video store.
Oh, okay.
So we'd have to do video store first, then the chips.
Videos first, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So kind of a main-ish road. Actually, a little bit similar to like MCC. Like even the buildings actually that we're in, it's quite the same with the kind of the peaked kind of domed roof thing. So
Was
it's
it
actually
about this big or was it
yeah,
bigger
it kind
or
of actually
small?
reminds me. Yeah, coming in here actually kind of reminds me of what. Yeah, Clovercrest Baptist Church.
Oh, that was what it was called.
Yeah.
Clovercrest. See, so we're getting little
I
tidbits
don't know
that
how
we can
well
get
we'd
in there.
roller skate on this carpet though.
No.
Oh,
Yeah, wouldn't work as well.
So yeah, that's chips.
Yeah.
Me, memories of chips.
I enjoy
and
that.
so therefore I'm quite fussy about my chips.
Yeah.
And I think New South Wales has kind of, let me down a little bit
New South Wales 10 years behind on the chip front.
on the chip front. Yeah, it's just not quite the same. Anyway,
Have you found a likely substitute?
Yeah, we would.
Ask the same
Yeah.
question? Sorry.
I don't, not really. So we do chips near home. We're in Sutherland, and so there's a chip shop on the corner opposite the train station.
Yeah.
They're not too bad because we've been quite specific. I'm like, you need to extra cook them. So then he'll pull one out and he's like, is this cooked enough? And I'm like, no, man, keep going.
That's pretty cool that he asked you if it's enough.
Yeah,
I like that.
He's pretty good. I actually, Jairus introduced me to the chips across the road from here. And but they're like a shoestring.
Yeah, they're.
What is that? Is that what they're called? Fries?
Yeah,
Like a
fry.
French fry?
Yeah,
But obviously, whatever salt they're putting on them, I don't want to know what's in it, but they're quite delicious.
I think, don't you think it's
MSG.
MSG?
Probably.
I just remember like Jabish at late night making popcorn with MSG, and it tasted very similar.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Ethan loves those chips, doesn't he?
Oh, they're great.
They're good chips.
Yeah,
It's almost
they're
like
really
there's a weird vibe of vinegar but chicken salt. I don't know,
Yeah.
but it's good.
Yeah,
It's a good combination of whatever
I've
it is.
tasted a couple of Ethan's and I'm like, I don't know, I think it's not really doing it for me.
Not doing it for you?
Well, probably because it's like kind of a version of flavoured salt. I think that's why.
Yeah, you're a
Maybe.
plain kind of guy.
You're a plain kind of guy.
I like to keep some things plain so I can be extravagant in others.
Classic.
I'm a classic guy. I read the classics and then also make the classics. So stupid. You got me in a good mood, Lorelei. I think that's one of my favourite chip stories though. Like it's cool that you're like it links to church. That's what's pretty fun.
Yeah.
about
Church
it.
and family. Like.
Yeah,
And
church
hanging out
and
with my
family, yeah.
sister. Like
Yeah.
it's, and even now, so my sister lives in New South, actually she lives 5 minutes down the road from us. Like we will still on occasion try and do the hot chips and come home and watch a movie. Like it's definitely a really strong childhood memory of
That's nice.
hanging out with her on a Sunday afternoon.
Still the Sunday movie, or have you moved on?
Yeah, well, no, I don't even know if there is a Sunday movie anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
It's
that-
whatever
assume there
pops up
would
on
be.
the
Netflix
free-to-air,
first.
the free-to-air TV. I don't watch free-to-air TV. Pfft. But
Yeah, I don't even.
do they ever put movies on anymore?
Yeah.
On like, I don't know, there's some of the weird, what's the other, the Channel 9
Yeah.
channels or
Gem.
the other
Go
Gem,
and
those.
Rush and
But I don't think there's like
Rush?
that traditional like
there's a racing one.
1 o'clock Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
There is a movie on.
I think there would be, surely.
Hopefully.
I
But
don't know.
anyway.
That's
Yeah.
That's always something people, we talk about is that the kind of gathering around TV shows doesn't happen anymore, right? I feel like the one with my family is Hey Hey It's Saturday.
Yes,
Like-
we did. Hey,
Like you watch Hey Hey It's Saturday, but
too.
you'd sit down, like we'd have kind of like a picnic in front of the TV with dinner and
Yes.
stuff. But you don't really get that anymore because of the
No.
internet. But
Yeah, Hey Hey It's Saturday for us was my dad used to blow dry my hair watching Hey Hey It's Saturday
you
because
say
it was
blow
like
dry your hair?
yeah, because my
How can
hair
you hear
was
the TV though?
my hair was so thick. Oh yeah, no, you can turn it up.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
so
yeah.
loud.
Well, but see, it's funny because actually with the kids, we had gotten into Survivor.
Oh,
yeah.
Braden
So
loves
we would
Survivor.
sit and watch Survivor, and on a Sunday night, it would have we would watch Survivor, and I blow dry Elisa's hair. Yeah, so
Full
it's quite
circle.
funny actually.
I still
yeah,
think
full
that's
circle.
very loud.
Yeah, sure. The boys hate it, but it's like, dude, I'm not going to just stand in the bathroom and look at the wall. Like,
Yeah.
Surely
gotta
you're
watch
looking.
something.
Surely you're looking in the mirror, not the wall.
well, no, not when I'm blow drying
She's
Elisa's
looking-
hair. I
Oh,
don't
Elisa's
care.
hair.
She's looking
Oh,
at Survivor. We've already established that.
It takes like an hour. So
Really?
I
Does it
need
really?
entertainment. Yeah, it's
Wow.
thick. So yeah, family
You think that
memories.
we would have come up with different ways to dry our hair rather than just this basically a leaf blower, a miniature leaf blower blowing your hair. Don't you think?
It's the monopoly that
something
that Remington have. The Remington monopoly.
I didn't even know a brand of hairdryers. It shows you how thick my hair is.
I was going to say,
what is it, Vassell Sassoon or whatever that brand is? Or are they just? Is that just shampoo?
No, we've got a Dyson one. That's kind of handy.
Oh, they've branched out into hairdryers. Because what you've got fans and the vacuum cleaners. They do other stuff too.
They do the hand things in the bathroom.
They do in the. What are they called? They're called hand dryers, aren't they?
Yeah.
They work pretty well though. The ones that are in public bathrooms, I feel.
I don't use the ones in public bathrooms.
Oh.
That's like the one.
What do you do?
I'm not a germaphobe around anything else, but I will not use those things.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But you don't have to touch anything.
Doesn't matter. You can look.
What are you doing? Just putting your hands in your pockets?
I don't care. I'd rather have wet hands than deal with those things.
That would bother me. Just have wet hands straight after. I still prefer in terms of method if there's hand towels.
Yeah,
that's much better because hand dryer you're still not. Oh, you don't agree? Oh, is that an environmental concern?
It's healthier. It's more. The hot air will get rid of the germs.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough.
I feel like it's not hot enough.
It's not hot enough.
Lukewarm,
I want my hands to come
out of my mouth,
burning.
Well, you'd rather burn your hands.
It's like.
What do you want? You want
I don't want anything.
Fire.
I just don't want that.
It sounds like you want a fire to hold your hands to.
I feel like this has become a bigger controversy than it needs to be.
It's going to be a new question.
Yeah.
Someone's
gonna.
What kind of chips do you like, and how do you like to dry your hands?
Hands in public bathrooms.
Yeah. Oh man.
Anyway, church family chips. I like that.
Church family chips.
So I'm sure that plays into the next question, which is, Lorelei, how did you become a Christian?
Yeah. Well, obviously grew up in church because it was associated with the chips.
We really went to get chips.
I don't know which one came first, whether we went for chips and then went, there's a church there. Maybe we should go. No.
You roller skated over there.
Yeah, that's right. No, grew up in church. So, mum and dad were Christians, and so my sister and I went along as well. So that was actually I'm really lucky that I've had a really awesome kind of childhood growing up in a church, really awesome church family that we'd spend lots of time with. But becoming a Christian, so I was baptised kind of end of 1993, so 12th of December. So I was about 14 or 13, about to turn 14. And so I remember that was definitely my kind of decision that I'm going to take ownership of my faith, for myself. But I think it's been a kind of an ongoing journey with God. It wasn't like that there was just this one moment, I'm a Christian, tick, done. Everything's been great ever since. And in fact, I was flicking through my old Bible that I had as I was growing up. Because I was looking for a card that I knew was saved in there. And kind of the passage that we've been hanging out in this week was earmarked with a piece of paper from 1996 where I'd written a note that said, I've fully given my life to God, I've recommitted, I'm going to stop trying to be a control freak. I had listed all these things that I was trying to hand back over to God. And so, I was just reminded again this week that actually there's been kind of key moments in my life where I've kind of had to either come back to God or that I've really seen God work in my life that's helped encourage my faith. But I've been pretty lucky that I've known God and known that God's been there for me since I was little. Yeah. Is
there that was really cool that you've got that story around that time. Is there a moment around that time though that you were like, oh no, the reason I'm asking that is because a lot of people come on the podcast and go, I took the faith on for myself, especially if they grow up in a Christian family. But also there's often a moment where they make a different decision to what they usually would have done. You have any memories of that?
It's interesting because I think just generally as a kid, I was kind of the type of kid who wanted to do well, wanted to please others,
kind of achiever,
wanted to be
like
good. Yeah, a bit of a high like achiever, but I think really rooted in just trying to please people or just trying to be a good person.
Yeah.
And I think some of that too was in my faith, like you're trying to do what the Bible says and, you're reading the Bible and it's kind of got this guidance on how to live your life. And so it was very much like, yep, I'm going to try and do all of those things. But it's that, that moment where it shifts from just being about, I know God loves me. I'm a Christian, so I'm going to live in this particular way because that's what a Christian should do. To actually, I've got an intimate relationship with Jesus because I've really understood his love for me. And then that changes, like you kind of flip it around. It's actually then focusing on Jesus and your relationship, and then the outworking of that then happens to be that you start to live your life differently. And that for me actually came a little bit later, when after Todd and I were even married, and when we were trying to have our kids, there was a moment that actually we just felt God's hand, and he just spoke to us as individuals. And it was that kind of moment that turned for me, where I'm like, actually, this is about me, not just about what I do. He loves me. So that was, I was probably about 28, 29, I want to say. So as an adult. So
that's okay.
Took a while.
Well, I think in regards to that, I kind of resonate with that a fair bit, was that I kind of, yes, I'm a Christian, but I had almost like legalistic framework in my mind.
Yeah.
And instead of knowing when I'd stuffed up for whatever reason, whatever it was, so I would try and take it on myself. I just need to be better. I just need to do this better.
Yep.
And I would say in the last probably like 2 years, I've started to work out that that's why I still do that, and still trying to take that on and do things. If I just do better, then, and it's not even like if I just do better, God will be happy with me. It's like, oh, this is what I should do. That's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
But now I'm starting to understand, like, I think grace is really important in understanding that that's not the case. But also it's interesting, like the fruit that comes out of that once you start realizing that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it was that kind of point for you when you were about 28.
It's for me, it was the motivator and the driver. It was like, instead of it just being about trying to be a good person, and therefore, and in the midst of all of that, trying to show Jesus' love to others as well, and how do you do that? Oh, I do that by trying to set myself apart, trying to live in a different way. But again, it was almost out of this is the list, this is the ticker box. If I do all these things, and I can show God's love. If I do all these things, then that's being a good Christian, versus actually put all of that aside. And even if I was the only person here on earth, like the fact that Jesus would still have come and died for me, how does that then change my relationship with Jesus? And if I focus on him and that relationship and the intimacy of that, he's the one that shows me what I need to do. He's the one that kind of prompts me when there's someone in my path I should share Jesus with, or where there's behavior in my life that's, I need convicting of. Like, it's, seeking him first changes all of those other things, rather than it being the other way around of, I'll do all these things and that will help me to be closer to Jesus.
Yeah. I think you hitting the nail on the head there for me too. But we kind of, even in that sense, and I'm sorry, we're kind of cutting you out of the conversation at the moment, Brad.
No,
not
fine.
intentionally. But even in that sense, sometimes you're like, I should have done this earlier. So that's the thing that I have now sometimes. Like, I can't believe I wasted so much time not understanding this earlier and sooner. But I think they're all kind of negative connotations that you associate with yourself. Can I ask you, what's like a genuine example that was really positive after that, you making that change? Like, what do you think changed in your life when you were able to make that connection?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, how do I say this so it doesn't sound... like in our family, we talk about our love cup and our love cup being full. And I think the biggest shift for me after that decision was that if I go to Jesus first, like he fills me up. And that because I'm full, then what the overflow of that is love and grace and compassion and service to others. But when it's coming from the Holy Spirit rather than from my own efforts and my own works, I just think the fruit and the outcome of that is different. And so, you know, like in my workplace, you know, I could try and be I'm the Christian, you know, and so people would know I was a Christian and therefore I had to do what a Christian does versus actually just being myself and letting God work through me. There was a genuine, there was an authenticity to it. And what I would see is that certainly because then when I moved into kind of leadership roles, you know, I had a group of people who I was responsible for. You know, the thing I'm proudest of that people would say is, you know, you were just authentic. You were real with us. You shared yourself with us. You weren't this distant boss or distant manager. And so that then was able to encourage them. They actually felt invested in, you know, and none of that was me. That was the overflow of God in me, being able to kind of love them, support them, invest in them. Similar, you know, my attitude towards serving and the work that I do, I couldn't have sustained doing some of the things that I've had to do in work if it wasn't because God was sustaining me and working through me, because in just our human efforts, you'd get exhausted, you'd get burnt out, you'd get disillusioned. We're actually having God first. It's like, no, there's compassion, there's grace, there's a love for people, and therefore that kind of kept encouraging me to keep fighting the good fight or doing the work that I do. So I think, yeah, there was definitely that's probably, I don't know if that helps answers the question. No, I love that.
I think that's so cool.
That's probably the difference for me over that period.
Because, I mean, in a sense, with like that shift that we're talking about, it means that you understanding God's grace helps you understand that He genuinely cares for you. So then you're talking about in your workplace, you're showing those people that you genuinely care for them.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's not coming from me, you know.
But like God's transforming
what
you.
He's done.
Like, I was reading Romans 12 with the kids a couple of days ago, and it's like, I think it's verse 2 where it talks about transform, like you are transformed.
Yeah.
And I think that's another part of that realization is like, because you're transformed, you don't have to do it on your own.
Yeah.
But if you're allowing Him to transform you, end up the fruit again is just so much greater.
Yeah.
But I think I just wonder, sometimes you also like, you don't want to say, I did this myself, but then you're like, but God helped me realize this. So He's changing me.
Yeah.
So I'm making that change.
Yeah.
So then I think you're almost more content with yourself. Therefore, that is an outflow with other people.
We've been hanging out with the kids this week in like Matthew, so looking at the Beatitudes, but also really focusing on the passage where it talks about being the salt of the earth, that you're a lamp and the light on the city on the hill. And we saw a great, it was a sermon online that we kind of had tapped into, where in order to be the salt of the earth, where it talks about being a lamp, well, in biblical times, the lamp was a wick in kind of like in the oil to be able to burn. And so it's that being rooted in the Holy Spirit, that you're constantly being filled. That's actually what gives you the ability to be the light. And so it's that, how do you put that first rather than just trying to, you know, if you're a bit of timber and you're being burnt, you burn out too quickly and you've got to find more timber. Whereas actually if you're soaked in the Holy Spirit and position yourself there first, like it's you can then burn and be that light to others. And I think that was the shift for me of it wasn't by my own works. It wasn't by trying to be a good person. What can I do? It was the Jesus first means then all of those other things can happen. Yeah.
Anything you want to chip in on, Braden?
Oh, I think there was like lots of different elements I think that you tapped into with that in terms of, the being filled up by God and Him sustaining you through that. Being a witness to the people around you, sharing your life, like Paul says, like, you know these things because I shared my life with you. Like there's so many different aspects to all of that. That's really encouraging. But I think, and again, it's about being authentic with the people around you, and hopefully, if Jesus is a big part of your life and you're letting Him into your life to change you and work with Him, then letting other people in your life, hopefully, they'll see that as well. And I think it's a really cool opportunity.
Yeah, like we were talking before we kicked this off around, you know, like just with our kids of, you know, how do you help them to be themselves, to not be influenced by those that are around them, like, which I just think is so hard for kids today with all the influences of social media and everything else. But like even as adults, it's that same thing of until you really understand who you are in Christ and that you are loved by Him, it's at that point that you can just let everything else go of I don't need to do the people pleasing, I don't need to do it in my own way, you know, like that's then that shift of being able to be your authentic self, because it's not that you don't, you know, people say, oh, I don't care what people think of me, so stuff them, I'll do whatever I want. It's actually like, no, I just have a confidence in who I am in Christ, and therefore I can just be authentic because I'm not actually needing other people's approval. It's well,
I've
got His approval.
You're no longer trying to find identity in other people, or in things around you. You've got that identity, and therefore you can go about expressing that rather than trying to stumble around trying to find that. I think that is that's the hard thing with young people is you often see them trying so hard to figure that out, and it can be quite challenging, can't it?
So it was probably the long way round of, I think that was the change that happened when I,
that was great.
When I, fully got a chance to understand that.
I just noticed that you're like, I was 28 by that time. I'm like, I think I was probably later. just to let you know. But I think I really enjoyed that. That was cool. And I think the way that we have to constantly remind ourselves that stop relying on yourself is, I don't know if that's a cultural thing, like a independence kind of individualistic kind of thing that maybe perpetuates in our culture as well. But it's, and maybe since the Enlightenment times of, what is it, I think therefore I am, where that kind of kicked that off. But it's like kind of cool not to have to do it on your own.
Well, I think the further we've shifted into individualism in our culture and away from collectivism, we've kind of supported independence and individualism and not being reliant on anything else. And so the idea of being reliant on something else comes across as weak or dependent or unhelpful. And I think,
But then there's an interesting pull in that too of, like your individual relationship with God, like your kind of accountability, responsibility of maintaining and investing in that relationship versus then the collective too of being in community with other people, because God says for us to be in community, to encourage one another.
Well, I think that is the big shift with people who've grown up in a Christian environment is, when you have that shift of experiencing the collective and then shifting to that individual relationship, which is, I think, what we've been talking about.
Which I think has then always been where I've seen other people come to Jesus or come to know Jesus. It's like, it's really quickly an individual encounter and relationship because
they happen simultaneously.
I always love the thing. The biggest things I learned from Stu is that Jesus died not just to reconcile us to God, but also to reconcile us to each other.
Mm.
And I think that's what you're speaking about there is like, because of that personal reconciliation and with our relationship with God, we therefore can also be reconciled to each other and do that in a collective context as well, which is why we love so much, hanging out so much at that church. That's for example.
Great.
All right, let's rewind, like a videotape that you borrowed at Kelly Road video store.
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster's a Blockbuster, damn.
Video Easy.
Video Easy. It might have been. Yeah, true.
What was it like growing up in Adelaide? Tell us, do you think it would be, like your kids are growing up in Sydney now, obviously it's a generation gone, but was it very different?
I don't think it would have been very different to what it would have been like growing up here at that time. So it's funny because certainly talking to Stu sometimes, because he knows some people that we used to hang out with in Adelaide, and listening to kind of what youth group was like here was quite similar to what we were kind of doing too in Adelaide. But it was smaller, so it was like a big country town. So you do kind of know everybody. Like we were just reflecting like best childhood as far as we would go holidaying with families from church. So there'd be anywhere up to kind of like 15, 20 families. We'd go in our caravans at Easter time to the Barossa Valley, and we'd spend summer at the beach in our caravans all together. So, you know, as a big group of kids, we could run around and kind of run a bit of a muck together. We had a fairly big youth group, and so that just kind of meant we could do some fun stuff as big groups of kids, which was good. But everyone kind of knew everybody. And then we did stuff with other churches. Like we would do Easter camps with other churches, and which was really encouraging to kind of see other kids following Jesus. But it was pretty straightforward. What about if it's a reasonably small town? What was it called, by the way? Like, is it just Adelaide, or is it like the sub? Or you're outside? So there's Adelaide. I grew up in like the Tea Tree Gully area. That sounds salubrious. Tea Tree Gully. Tea Tree Gully, and then there was Golden Grove was the new development. So that was all. I feel like I've heard that name in New South Wales before. There's a ferry called Golden Grove. Oh, is there? It was one of the. It sounds like a retirement. I think it was one of the boats in the First Fleet. Oh, was it? I think so. That's where it came from. Yeah. What about that? Like, if it's feel like you said that like lots of people knew everyone else. Is that what about like those that were Christians and those that weren't? Is that a contentious issue? No, not too much of a contentious issue. It was funny actually. Where I went to high school, so I went to Golden Grove High School. So that was a new subdivision, new development area. So I went to the public school, and on the same campus there was the Christian school and the Catholic school. So we had 3 schools. Yeah, and so then for senior school, we all shared the same facilities. So I could be doing home ec next to... Home economics, that is. Home economics, like next to the Christian school class. And in fact, in year 12, because of the subjects that I picked up on the different scheduled lines, I actually went and did my year 12 accounting at the Christian school. Oh, wow. So that I could, it was funny that we kind of all mixed. And so for me growing up with in the public school, there was an awareness because there was a Christian school and a Catholic school on the same campus that it was never really contentious that when I would say that I was a Christian, it's like, but could you just not afford to go to the Christian school? And I was like, I don't know, but I'm at the public school. Wow, okay. But we used to do like a Christian lunchtime group at the school, and I never ever felt like any of my friends kind of, it was never an issue for me to be a Christian at school. And in fact, a lot of my friends came to church, and quite a number of them actually ended up becoming Christians. And so, my best friend from high school, came to know the Lord. Awesome. I think like year 10, year 11. And I then ended up going on to work in a church. Like it was really easy to share my faith at school. Did you enjoy high school? That was I did actually. Yeah, that's good. In fact, I think I often say if I could go back to any year of my life, I would actually go back to year 12.
Ooh.
Yeah,
That's
1996.
Please tell us why.
1990s.
Yeah, I don't
What
know.
year?
Just was fun. We just had
Yeah.
a really fun year.
Yeah.
Lots of things went not great that year. Like one of
Yeah.
my friends died in a car accident.
Oh,
My
geez.
grandfather passed away. My best mate's dad died in a car accident. Like it was a full on year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like full on year. But it was just good friendships.
Yeah.
Obviously, my little post-it note in my Bible said I re-engaged with God in a different way in that
Yeah.
year. I actually enjoyed school
Yeah.
that year. Like I struggled in some areas, but I had a really amazing teacher who invested in me in that year. That kind of was a bit life-changing too.
Well, tell us more.
I basically failed English kind of all the way through. And at the end of
Really?
year 11, they said to me, I don't think you should do this in year 12. You probably should drop it.
Don't you have to do English in year 12?
Not back then.
Oh.
Like in Adelaide, we didn't learn about verbs and adjectives and
Oh,
like
I only started learning about that when I started learning a different language.
yeah.
Like, this concept in English,
like,
you're like, oh.
we're of that age group that they didn't teach that, whereas
Yeah.
they teach that now. Anyway,
Do
they
that.
they were like, yeah, you really probably shouldn't do that. And I'm like, well, I think I'm gonna. But my English teacher that I had for year 12 really saw something in me and invested. And certainly after when my friend passed away, I remember it so clearly. It's going to make me cry. But she had me sit in like a classroom and she's like, you just need to write it down. Just write it down.
Right.
Like my
part
feelings
of the grieving
down.
process,
So I kind of wrote it and she's like, no, go again. Like tap into
the emotion.
the emotion. And, for me at that stage, I was still a bit control freaky. I'd kept everything boxed up. Like nobody kind of saw behind the mask a bit. But she really helped me to tap into a part of myself that I probably never allowed anyone to. Wow. And probably even God. So it'd be interesting the timing of when I wrote that little note compared to when that happened.
Right.
And eventually it kind of just cracked and I just wrote. In the end, I got full marks for my HSC English.
Wow, that's...
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, far out. That's so good.
So I went from failing to,
that's
I
unreal.
topped in the state of,
So no
my
wonder
English.
to make no wonder you appreciate that teacher so much. It makes such a big change.
Yeah.
I do love the fact that teachers that really care can make a huge impact on kids' lives.
Impact.
Yeah.
And
My
then
favorite teacher at high school was helped me enjoy things.
Yeah.
Rather than like read the textbook, then write some notes. Like, I'm like, what is this? Yeah, that's so cool.
And then my whole life has been writing ever since.
Yeah.
I write policy speeches.
Yeah.
Like everything has been based around the ability to write clearly and passionately and articulately. Yeah.
So what did that teacher unlock though? Like I know that like you were writing out of the emotion that helped, but what weren't you getting to begin with that she helped you with?
I don't think it was anything about what I wasn't getting. I think it was about I held everything so tight.
Really?
And yeah, I think it went to that, be a good person, be a good daughter, be a good Christian. Like I was probably holding everything, the pressure of all of that so tight. I think she gave me permission to be ugly on the page,
Right.
To put down, like I was angry. I was angry at God that, that he died. I was angry that, there was lots of ugly emotions in there that a good Christian doesn't express because, God's got a plan. It was probably in his, was it? I don't know. Yeah. I'm just really upset that my friend died.
Yeah.
And I'm allowed to bring that to God and be cross because he's big enough to hold that. My teacher wasn't a Christian, but she just gave me permission to not be the perfect Christian and to be sad and cross and angry and all those emotions that I think as a kid I was probably thinking I wasn't allowed to have because that wasn't trusting in God. And there's been other, that has helped me because there's been other times I've just been really cross and angry and upset and hurt that I'm like, God, I thought you would have done something different in this situation and you haven't. But you know, you've got a choice there of, do you bring that to God and lay it at his feet, or do you hold on to it tightly and it then impacts your relationship with him? So
which again is not allowing him to be in control kind of thing. It's like, oh, I can sort this out myself.
Control is my kryptonite. It's the go around the mountain with God. I do not know how many times for him to teach me to let it go.
Well, at least that gives us the title of the podcast. At least control or let it go. We'll decide. Wow, that's
No.
We didn't talk about that in the last one. That's really cool.
I told you we might go somewhere different today.
That's what I love about it. No, that's so. What a great impact.
Yeah.
Did you find leaving high school daunting then? I find that some people who had a really positive experience maybe in high school, maybe the next step can be something really challenging.
Yeah,
good question.
Or did you kind of already have an idea of what you wanted to do after high school?
Yeah. I don't think I found it daunting to leave high school, but I think that is the beauty of being in a Christian, like a church family where that doesn't change.
Yeah, so you had something.
So you have
stable.
that continuity of friendship and routine and life and whatever was there. So not daunted at all. I had no idea what I really wanted to do, and what I started off doing is not even close to anything that I then ended up doing for work.
Yeah,
because I went into like conference and event management, tourism degree.
Yeah.
I think I worked for 12 months in that space while I was at uni, and then never did it again.
Why did you choose it though? Like initially you would have chosen it for a reason, right?
I know why I chose. So my mum used to work in like the medical space. So for like the Royal, like the College of Surgeons and kind of in a medical space. And I was like, that's really cool. I love that. I am not smart enough to be a doctor. I'm not. But I'm like, but I can run conferences which doctors go to learn stuff. I think that was where my connection was. So that whole event management piece was I can bring people together so that they can learn.
Which uni did you go to?
So I started off at TAFE.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And so in Adelaide, actually,
they don't have a uni. So
it was quite. It was quite actually before its time. So actually, New South Wales is only just catching up to this as a model, which I was like, oh, interesting. That the TAFE and the university work together. So I was able to go to TAFE like for the first 2 years, and then my third year of TAFE, I then transitioned to uni as well, and then you finish your last year at uni. So I came out with an advanced diploma and a bachelor's.
Oh wow!
At the end of it,
double degree.
Yeah, so it was good.
What was the uni though? Did we get the name of the uni?
South Australia.
The state.
Yeah, University of South Australia.
Yes, we just the entire state is university.
Well, it's no different to the University in New South Wales.
I know. I'm just banging out Adelaide. That's all.
Yes. So
was it that large uni? Did it have lots of people there?
I don't know, because I did it all at the TAFE campus.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're
not that big.
One of my things lately is just like, I wonder what that uni was like. I want to just go explore it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I hear about the unis in Melbourne, which sounds pretty cool, but I've never been there.
Right. Yeah, I've been to a few unis.
What is it? RMIT?
Oh, yeah.
And there's Melbourne University. I think that's a popular one. Let's just list off all the unis in Victoria.
What Joel's doing that?
What you said that youth group in church was really stable, which is great, and I think that's something that hopefully we can provide to lots of young people too, because it was the same for me. What does that look like at the time as you're finishing high school, and what were you doing in church? You were in leadership?
Oh yeah, it was nuts. Hey, seriously, the stuff that we used to get up to. So yes, I was a youth group leader. So I started off. Actually, I took a group of girls all the way through from Sunday school all the way through.
From Sunday school?
High school.
Love that.
So, youth group was crazy. You know, I remember we shipped in like skate ramps, and we took over the car park for like a skate night, and we used to do like rave disco things, and I worked at Granny May's, so like I borrowed all the lava lamps. Like I remember decking out the church
what's Granny May's?
Oh, Granny May's. See, that's showing my age.
Or is it South Australian?
If you don't know Granny May's, then you're too young. It was like a gift store, so cards and gifts, but they were the shop that had like the naughty corner of novel. Yeah. Anyway, how my parents ever let me work at Granny May's, I do not know, but whatever. Okay. Yeah, it was big. We had lots of kids. Saw so many kids come to know Jesus too. Like it was a number of our youth leaders, including Todd, were like chaplains in the local high schools, and so we had just stacks of kids coming and hanging out. It was really fun. Really, really fun.
Wow.
So that it was very much our focus of just discipling young people.
It was usually Friday night?
Usually Friday night.
And then you go to church on Sunday? Yeah.
And then Sunday night, we had a Sunday night service that we'd have, was mainly a youth service on a Sunday night service. Okay. Yep. It was good. Yeah. Just used to do stupid stuff. In Adelaide, there's this there's this massive hill in the city. Yeah. There's a statue of Colonel Light at the top. And having done a tourism degree, I had to learn all about Colonel Light and how he designed the city. So which is why Adelaide's like a grid. Anyway, Montefiore Hill, it's called. It's a huge hill. So we used to do ice blocking. So we'd get big blocks of ice shipped up and you'd sit on the ice and slide down the hill on the ice. Yeah. We used to have the ambulance there waiting because like the number of kids broken wrists or ankles anyway, it was a nightmare. But gee, we did it every year because it was the best.
It was a nightmare. But
it was a nightmare. Someone would always go home hurt in the ambulance, but it was still the best. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember the first night of Rev that I led, which is year 9 and year 10. At Gaimea we played helicopter. Do you know that game?
No.
Where you attach something to a rope and someone in the middle spins around and you have to jump over it.
Oh, yes.
And this poor girl got hammered and she broke her ankle.
Oh, no.
That was the first night she ever came.
Oh,
first and last.
I think it was the last two. So
yeah.
I still think about, I don't remember her like facial recognition. I don't recognize her facial recognition. I don't remember what she looked like, but I still think about her a lot. Like, I'm just really worried that
I hope she
may
found
never
Jesus
know
another way.
Yeah, that really does play on my mind all the time. But then you're like, again, God will take care of it.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, no, it was nuts. Lots of fun.
Where did you get the big ice blocks from?
I don't know. There was just a guy from church who worked.
There's always a guy from church.
Some ice guy.
He just rocked up, and then we got really sophisticated. Where, like a couple of years in, he would drill a hole through the ice so we could tie a rope to it. Because the hardest bit was getting the ice back up the hill. So you used to have to push it. And he's like, I reckon I can fix that. So he'd put some rope on it so we could drag it back up. And the more the ice went down, the slipperier the grass got. So then the faster you'd go. It was awesome.
Like, I'm not going at the start. I'm holding off. Yeah. Get all the amateurs to go down.
Yeah.
Are you just as leaders just doing it?
No, we were doing it straight off the bat. Like, you don't wait.
This is how you do it, kids. Yeah, right.
Do life with them, not watch them.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any injuries though?
Nah. You got to be smart about it.
Way more coordinated.
Yeah, correct.
And these Unco kids.
Correct. Lift your feet, keep your arms up, you're good.
Yeah. Lift your feet, keep your arms up.
Well, you've got to keep your hands out the way. The reason kids broke their wrists is because they'd put their hands down. Like, don't put your hands down. You're going to stop eventually. Yeah. Just got to trust the process.
See, when you told me it was a hill, I was imagining it was on a road. But you saying it was on grass.
No, like it's a massive, like it's a massive grass hill, and then you kind of hit a park at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, worst case is you're going to hit a tree, like once you're at the bottom, but you'll stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Wow, have fun.
Yeah. So for a control freak, I obviously was able to let myself go occasionally.
Yeah. It's obviously fun enough to. Yeah.
Look out, Lorelei's annual letting go day.
That's right.
Ice day.
She's on.
Yeah. Get the ice guy in.
Yeah. We briefly mentioned a key character, I think, in the next chapter. which is Todd.
Todd.
Yeah.
Let's turn the page.
Let's turn the page. How did you meet Todd?
So I think I mentioned that we do Easter camps with other churches. Actually, Todd was around, so he didn't grow up in our church. He came along actually with my best friend's brother. Is kind of how the connection happened. So he was kind of around, but I didn't really know him very well because slightly different age group. But we were both leaders on an Easter camp together. And so we'd had a couple of meetings leading into camp. And I don't even know how it happened, but whether I asked or whether he offered to give me a lift to camp because I couldn't get there. So we had, I don't know how long in the car, but I did get us lost because back then we didn't have Google Maps. We actually had to use a street directory.
Just
I never would have
and it was
anywhere.
an hour and a half away that turned into 2 and a bit hours away
God.
because
This would kill me.
I don't know north and south and east and west, which still
You grew up in a city that's a grid.
correct. So it used to be easy until you got out of the city and then you're stuffed. It still drives Todd mental that I don't know my directions. But we spent quite a bit of time in the car getting to know each other. And it was probably a bit of a God thing. We were quite pragmatic about it. So over camp, it was kind of I actually think there's a thing here. So I'd spent some time praying. Actually, I even remember it was Easter Saturday night. We had a worship night at camp. And so, during that time, I was I really felt God say, you need to do something about that. I think, And so had a conversation with him and I'm I actually think there's a thing here that God wants for us. And so we're so let's talk about it. So we probably talked about it for quite a number of weeks. Spent some time with our pastor, who's our, still our really good friend, talking about it and praying about it before we went, okay, well, let's give this a crack and see what happens. But we were pretty, it wasn't very romantic.
That's what I was going to say.
Honest.
That's what I was that's very different to
Pragmatic is such a word, but it was pretty pragmatic. But it was just, we really felt it was God, and it was. So I think we dated for 4.5 years, 5 years, and then got married. Yeah. Yeah,
that is a. That is.
Yeah.
Should we write our will before we start going out?
It was. It does sound a little bit dry. I think we just knew that I'd had a couple of boyfriends before Todd, and so I think I was just really mindful that I had kind of made a decision that this whatever comes next needs to be what God wants.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, it was kind of a.
Wanted to be more serious. Is that what you mean?
And just put God first in the midst of that rather than just doing the teenage thing. I don't know. Yeah. And Todd's very serious too. I don't, if you know Todd at all, I shouldn't talk. Anyway, he had some sort of clear ambitions too of what he wanted, and he didn't really want anything to get necessarily in the way of that. And I was I think
including a woman.
I think I'm going to get in the way. So you better know what you're getting in for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Did you get in the way, do you think?
Yep.
But in a good way, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
There was two things. Yeah, there was kind of two paths he was on, and I was including it's in our wedding vows. I will marry you as long as you don't ever become a minister.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Why did you not want? Sorry,
why
why
did
you not want him to
that's
become?
That's a long. I don't know.
This is a long
story.
podcast, Lorelei.
Yeah,
it's cool.
I think. Man, the thing I love about Todd so much is his heart for people, and because my only commitment is to not cry on this thing. So, but when I talk about Todd, I can't help it.
I cried on mine. So.
Yeah, like his heart for people and his heart to serve and his diligence in that at that time. So I'm not going to project on all ministers and pastors. At that time for us in that season, at that place in our church's history, it was all consuming. Like all consuming in the sense of duty a little bit rather than just out of kind of that relationship, which is what we love about Soulies. It's about doing life together in community, and I'm sure if you're in full-time ministry there is other elements to it, but I just didn't want that to rob him of his love of what he cares for people. Yeah. So that's why it was kind of a deal breaker.
I think that's reasonably prescient to think like that when you're first starting to get married, though.
Well, it's why we moved to Sydney too.
And I think he appreciates that. So
Yeah.
I think he would appreciate that, I should say.
Yeah.
But you just mentioned moving to Sydney.
Yeah.
So did you finish uni first and then move to Sydney?
Yeah, so it was kind of revolved around, like Todd he went to uni a bit later as well. So both, like he'd worked before he started uni. So I was working, he finished uni. He'd done a social work degree. We were literally getting married. So we got married on the 22nd of December, so right before Christmas. So he'd finished his last exams.
Early Christmas present.
Graduated uni. We were getting married. We had lots of friends coming in from interstate, so back home for Christmas. So it was kind of a good time. Plus my best friend one of my bridesmaids got married 2 weeks before and the other one got married 3 weeks after. So it was kind of a bit of a busy season.
All consuming as well. like everything.
We had, from the time we got engaged to the time we got married, I think we'd been to 14
weddings.
Either engagement or weddings.
Oh, okay.
Like,
wow.
Yeah.
You know, like we were one of the first, but we were like one of the last to get married.
Yeah.
Because it was
a lot.
Yeah, it was a busy season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, finished uni, got married, moved. He moved in the January, and then I came in the February because he came to find just somewhere to live. Yeah, and started working for what was then, I don't know, it's DCJ now, Department of Communities and Justice, but community services.
Right.
Yeah.
Where did he land? Where did you land first in Sydney?
Yeah, so we landed in Miranda. So we're in the units kind of just opposite Sutherland Hospital, Carina Hospital on that corner. Yeah, so we were there for about 12 months. And then we moved to Cronulla where we were renting a place, which was really that was really lovely. And then we were able to buy a place, in Cronulla for a bit. Just a 2-bedroom unit.
I love living in Cronulla. When we've done it twice. I really enjoy it because you can get out and walk around a lot. And
we were opposite Shelley Park.
Yeah.
And we would have probably stayed. And like the couple next to us had their 2 teenage boys still. Like they just made it work because you can access the beach, the park and everything. But when we got a twofer and Elise joined the family along with Zach, we were like, we can't stay in a 2-bedroom unit with 3 kids.
Yeah. Do you want to ask if they're identical again? Or are we going to leave that alone?
Glad I started this podcast. Maybe I shouldn't have been on this one because I stuffed up the audio if it was me or I don't know. But yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't let you get away with that one.
Oh, that's all right. It's okay when you both have some connection with twins somehow.
Yeah.
You are the ultimate editor though. So
exactly. We can just lose this bit. Sorry, lost that on the editing room.
No, like when I mentioned Lorelei's name in the last episode with Jai, and then you're going to have to beep that out. And I learned how to beep it out. So I could just beep it out now. I'd never done the bleeping or beeping. I could just do that. And I could just
this whole bit out.
I could just do. No, I'll just do all the bits that you're talking about.
Every time I open my mouth.
Like that Braden swears a lot.
Wow, what was he talking about?
You know, the funny thing is the video on YouTube that I watched to learn how to do it. This guy was just like, just boop, boop, boop. Like he literally was swearing. He's like, you want to get these effing beeps out of like it was really funny. It was a really funny video because he was just bleeping all the bleeps out. But yes, anyway, let's move on. Again, the audio stuffing up, I learned a new skill.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Yep.
Leveling up.
Leveling up, that's right. Yeah. So you moved to, what about church? When you moved to Sydney,
Oh, yeah.
what does that look like?
Yeah, so so our minister from Adelaide had moved to Sydney 12 months before we did, and coincidentally was in Caringbah. So when we moved, Todd pretty well got to, he had a number of choices as to which office he was placed at with community services, and he was then placed at Miranda, so that was a blessing. So we kicked off going to the church that our friends Mark and Lynn were going to, which was a vineyard church meeting out of one of the life-saving, I don't know which one it was, down at Cronulla.
Oh, okay.
Which was kind of cool because you're doing church with all the windows looking out at the ocean.
Yeah, that's pretty
really
cool.
hard to not get distracted, but really awesome during worship to be worshiping God's creation at the same time. Yeah, and quite similar to Solly's. We would do a meal together, or kind of community together. So kind of grew up in a charismatic Baptist church, then went to Vineyard, very Pentecostal church, but a church plant. So quite small, and we saw that grow and different people coming in and out. Hard in Cronulla, because it's so transient of people living, coming and going, like backpackers or whatever. So we just saw lots of different people coming through the church.
What's the difference between you said what was it?
Charismatic Baptist church?
Charismatic Baptist, that's what you said, sorry. Going to Pentecostal, and then eventually you come here to an Anglican church. Talk to me about that. What's that like?
Yeah. So probably charismatic Baptist, really great Bible teaching. Worship maybe was a little bit different, a bit more happy clappy.
Oh, so when you say
Probably.
worship, you mean the music,
The singing
and stuff?
worship.
Mm-hmm.
Albeit really, it was interesting during that time, and certainly again being youth group leader, probably learning about the Holy Spirit and actually seeing the Holy Spirit work in people's lives. There was definitely a shift during that time over kind of maybe when I first became a Christian to when we left Adelaide, of really seeing the Holy Spirit start to work. So then coming to a Vineyard church where it's very Holy Spirit led, but still great Bible teaching. I think, it was just amazing watching, and still is, I still see the Holy Spirit work, but during that time, seeing people be healed, physically, emotionally, and actually probably what I learned at that time in the Vineyard Church is, what does heaven look like here on earth now? It's Jesus has won the victory, so we live in his victory, albeit we're not yet in heaven. But how do we see and ask God to break through and work here on earth like he does in heaven? And so having that real, almost what I learnt during that time was the expectation, expect God to work because he wants to. He says what Jesus did here on earth when he healed the sick, comforted, provided, he wants to do that for us now. I don't have to wait to heaven for that. And certainly because I was learning that over that period of where I really got to know God intimately, we saw him do that in our life of healing or miracles or moving to an Anglican church. I don't think it's too different in the sense of, we love that really good Bible-based teaching, community. Probably the praying for people in the moment is something that we do a little bit more of at home. But yeah, there's not that big. There's not.
It's
like ice cream. It's just different flavors.
Yeah, I wasn't asking you
expressed.
to say, one's
but it is
better than the other or anything.
But it is different. Yeah, no, it's not.
It's different.
But it is different. Yeah, it's definitely different. So there are bits that it's a bit like, people talk about their love languages.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think there are different love languages in your relationship with God too. Like some people really love being out in nature and the environment, and that's how they connect with God. And some people love, sitting in the Word is where they really, I think we all have slightly different love languages in our relationship. And so, but I think, so it's always going to be a little bit different for each person.
I think there's also just a different way that people learn.
Yeah.
And one of those things isn't necessarily always going to be all encompassing.
No.
And so like sometimes something visual or tangible will be something that helps you have a different experience or realization about your experience with God, or sometimes it'll be something you read or something you see, something that you feel. Like I think there's lots of different ways that
I agree.
Yeah, it's all encompassing.
Yeah.
I think as an example of that, like creation does that for me. When I'm either at the beach or you're just in like nature, you're like, man,
yeah,
you made all this.
Yeah.
And I think
it's so old.
the cool thing is that like you could be someone that connects with nature a lot, and that makes you feel really close to God. But then also you could open the Bible and read something, one word, and that like it's not always the same experience. Like that's going to help you connect. You don't really know how God's going to reach out through His Spirit and touch your heart in that moment.
Yeah, I think it's the same even just reading the Bible, right? You can read like the same Bible verse and get something different, completely different out of it at a different time of your life.
Yep,
yeah,
100%.
No, and I think it speaks a lot more to His all-encompassing nature, which I sometimes struggle to grasp, because it's like, I think I've said before on this podcast, I kind of liken it to my year 12 physics. I love year 11 physics. I did really well in it. Year 12 was like space, and like the distances are so large. How is the speed of light even a measurement? Like it takes millions of years just for the light to reach me, let alone like all that stuff was just too.
Yep.
So understanding that I have a personal relationship with God rather than a personal relationship with a planet that I can't see helps me with that. But it's something that's really hard for me to tangibly understand sometimes. But then when you're in creation, you're like, this is God's work. Like when we go do Easter down on Easter Sunday down at Swallow Rock, I think that's something I really love, because you've got that whole backdrop of the national park across the river. Yep. That's a good example of that. Yep. Returning back to you, Lorelei. The other one thing that I did ask you on the last podcast at the start was like, can you address the spelling and spelling and pronunciation of your name? I forgot to start the episode with that. Yeah. Why don't we do that as a small break before we return to the historical significance of your existence?
So it is pronounced Lorelei, albeit it's spelt with the I on the end. So, that's really unfortunate of my parents to do that to me. I do answer to Lorelei, but that's, consequence of the Gilmore Girls, which happens to be one of my favourite TV shows. But so I do answer to both and don't get offended at all.
Who's Lorelei in the Gilmore Girls?
Both the mother and the daughter.
Oh, they have the same name?
Yeah. So they call the daughter Rory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
But actually they're both called Lorelei.
I think it has just made me dislike that show even more, that they have the same name. Is it like, so she's like kind of Lorelei the second?
Yeah. Because she was like, anyway, what happens when you're doped up on drugs after giving birth?
Oh, is that what happened?
That's what's happened, supposedly, in the storyline.
Just call it my name.
Yeah, correct.
Wow.
So, yes, don't get offended. It is Lorelei, though.
I thought you were saying to me, don't get offended.
No, as in, like, I don't get offended.
I'm not.
Yeah. People,
What's the love of the Gilmore Girls come from? Is it just because of the name, or is it something else?
No, well, there's so many reasons. One, it's at my speed. So the Gilmore Girls has twice as many words in an episode as any other TV show. So it moves really quickly, and their speed of talking. And so that's kind of my operating level. And
So
so
you listen to podcasts on 2-speed or something?
Yep.
Oh,
so I find it really comforting.
Okay.
So I can relax into it because it's in my rhythm.
Right, okay.
But actually my friend, which maybe I shouldn't say on a podcast because it was probably illegal, but when I was
allegedly,
when I was going through IVF, she was actually my first boss when I joined government. She would give me, a set of discs of the Gilmore Girls and
the box set.
Yep, and a slab of quince paste, which is now also my favourite because I had to kind of be on bed rest, at periods of time, and I would binge watch the Gilmore Girls. So it kind of
with just quince paste, or do you?
No,
are you
like
adding?
with a bit of camembert and some
cool.
biscuits. But it was she made homemade quince paste that she would give me.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
So
I've only recently
awesome.
come to quince paste as well, and if you can get a
Homemade's
cracker
definitely
with
better.
a nice, like a smooth cheddar of some kind, and then some quince paste on it or something.
Ooh, never done it.
Or
with
maybe
cheddar.
it's more like a bitey,
Yeah.
like a cheddar or something. But it's like because it's so creamy with the quince paste.
Yeah.
That is.
Never tried that. I'm
That's
going
really,
to.
It's really good.
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. So that was where my love of Gilmore Girls came from. And it's funny now actually because now having teenage kids, like Zach's started watching it with me again from the beginning. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like freaking me out, but it's really fun.
I just feel like that was when I was in high school or something, Gilmore Girls. And I was just like, oh, it's just so annoying. Stop it.
I remember, my mum watching it.
Yes. I think it was probably more popular with women.
Yeah, probably.
Seemed to be its target market.
Yeah.
You mentioned IVF. So do you want to tell us about your children? Because I think that would be a very special thing to tell us about. Obviously, IVF is a later on process, but you have 3 children now. So
we do have 3 children.
there was some form of success.
Yeah, there was definitely some form of success. So Jairus is coming up to 17 and we've got Zach and Lise who are twins who are 14. I wanted to say 13, but I'm like, no.
And the funny thing is that once Jairus knew that you were coming on this podcast, he's like, you guys should have a YouTube channel. That's what he said. I'm like, there he is, mate. The Chip Lunch has been on YouTube ever since the beginning of the first episode. He was like, oh, I didn't know that.
It's probably because we're always, don't get on YouTube. Stop it.
Fair
It's
enough.
too much to download.
Using up all the
Don't use up the data.
not the data.
Not the data. Not the data. It sounds like
The dial-up,
It takes
like,
too long on the dial-up.
I can't use the phone because you're on the YouTube.
We're going to get throttled.
That's what we're like with the little microwave. I don't know how the microwave interferes with our Wi-Fi, but it does.
It does. No, that happens to
And
everyone.
so it's like kids do not heat up any food when you get home from school because Dad's on a meeting.
Oh.
I'm like, as if that's the new conversation over the dial-up speed.
Chuck it in the oven, bro. I've found we recently lost our RIP, our microwave. And my daughter seems to love reminding me that there was fire. And I'm like, I literally was heating something up normally and then went poof, and then that was it. It was dead. Anyway, I actually really like heating up my food in the oven.
In the oven now.
It tastes better.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure it does. It's just not as quick.
It's not as quick. It's not. Sometimes in the morning I'm like, I'll just heat that up. And I'm like,
Our life runs on 2-speed.
yeah.
I don't have time for that.
Does that mean you're like got the microwave on full 1,000 watts?
1200.
1,200 watts?
Oh, jeez.
Quick as possible.
Fair enough.
Too funny.
But is that boiling on the outside and then really cold on the inside though sometimes?
No, you stop halfway through, give it a quick mix and go again. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Right, got
There's
it.
a process.
Sorry. Okay.
Kids have got it under
Trust
control.
the process.
They're not starving.
I wasn't suggesting that, for goodness sake.
Anyway.
Sorry, let's
I
go back to the
digress.
story.
Yes.
Oh, I digress because I started talking about Jairus and the YouTube channel.
So we struggled to be able to have kids, and so IVF ended up being our journey, which is really, anyway, I know that there's people have mixed kind of views of that process and
As Christians, you mean?
as Christians and what that can look like, and certainly at the time it was tricky navigating kind of different people's views on that, but for us, like, God was so evident and still so in control throughout the whole process that, you know, he ultimately brings life into the world. And I, definitely believe that even in the midst of actually watching life be brought into the world and seeing, you know, you get to see your embryos before they go in. But even that process was tricky for us. And so God definitely showed his hand, and really a miracle for us in that process. Because, for us, you go through all the bits and bobs of injections and whatever else, but ultimately, it was a bit tough.
Yeah.
Certainly because Todd doesn't do needles. And so like he just was just like, good luck with that. You're on your own.
I'm in the waiting room.
I'm here, but I can't watch. And I'm just like, whatever.
I'm the one getting injected.
Yeah, I loved it when we went to the first one and they were trying to show him, you know, practice on an orange, and he's like, nah, that's not happening.
Oh, so he could help
so
you
he could
administer
help.
it.
Yeah, because I had to do that every morning and every night.
So when were you doing that yourself then?
Yeah. You can make little patterns on my belly, like little smiley faces out of the bruises. You know, you gotta find the joy in the midst of this really clinical, horrible,
tough process.
It's a really clinical, horrible process. You kind of rock into the waiting room and you feel like you're just in the cattle pen, you know, waiting to go through. Like it can be a really dry clinical process.
Yeah.
And you want it to be filled with love and everything that you hope when you're starting a family. But in doing all of that, you get to a certain point where your eggs have to be a certain size before they can take them out. And that wasn't working for us at all. And so we'd gone, you know, you go every second day for your scans and they measure them and they're like, this isn't happening for you. So we got to the point where the doctor said to us, listen, I'll give you 24 hours just so you can get your head around it basically, but it's not happening. Like, we'll give you to tomorrow, but then we're going to have to pull the pin and this probably isn't the path for you guys.
Speaking of being a dry and clinical process.
And you're like, okay, great. That's your 15 minutes in, you're out. Yeah. It's like, okay, off to work. So, you know, like I had to go to work. Todd had to go to work and you're like, what do you do with all of that? But so I went to work. Todd, on his way to work, he had to catch the train back out this way. But then he messaged me and he said, this was my daily reading. So when you talk about, you know, when God talks to you through the Bible and through the Word, you know, a passage that we've read over and over and over again throughout our whole life, like on that day, God gave him the passage in Mark 5 where it's about the bleeding woman and about Jairus, the synagogue ruler, and his daughter dying and Jesus bringing her back to life. And so for us, that was just that, you know, when I talked to you about when that moment that I realised that Jesus loves me and it's about my relationship with him, like in that moment, for Todd and I, we just felt so seen and understood by Jesus that he saw me as a woman struggling with womanly things, and saw Todd as a dad wanting to bring life to a child. You know, that was just a massive encouragement for us. And we had a group of friends who were praying for us as well through that time that we shared it with. And later that morning, one of my friends, really close friends, messaged me and said, I've been praying for you this morning and this is the Bible verse that God had given me, and it was the same passage. And so we just felt, even in that moment, we just felt seen and known and loved. The next morning we went back in for our scans and all of my eggs had like doubled in size, which was, the doctor said, I've never seen that happen before. Wow. You're good to go. Wow. And so, there was still a couple of little bumps in there, but from that process, we got Jairus, which is where his name comes from, from that passage.
I was actually just looking Mark 5 and it talks about heals the woman who's suffering. And then while Jesus is still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus the synagogue leader, "Your daughter is dead." They said, "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe."
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
really, really cool.
we did. Yeah.
And obviously that's why you named him Jairus.
And that's why we named him Jairus.
That's cool.
Yeah. So we're really, So even in that midst of that process, like we just knew God gave us Jairus as a gift.
I find that really encouraging though, because as you described, it looks a really difficult process. You've got to go through this whole clinical thing and injections and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I could understand if people were like, you know, God doesn't care about us in that situation. And hearing you say that, like, no, God, we know that God does.
Yep.
I think that's really encouraging for me to hear that. So.
Yeah. And then it was interesting for Zach and Elise because, like, we still actually had some embryos from that process, which we were unsuccessful with. So, you know, like I said before about just being really angry with God and really I was really angry. Like I was so angry that I was like, you put me through that, I went through that process. You gave us that miracle of it working.
Yeah.
You know, you gifted us with these embryos, which we have had Jairus. I'm like, you couldn't have just cut me a break and just let our next process be successful straight off the bat.
Yeah.
What is with that? I was so angry. And that took a long time for me to kind of process that with God, because we then had to start again and go through that whole process all over again.
Oh, geez, yeah.
But in reflection, it's like, because Zach and Elise, so it's Zacchaeus and Elizabeth are their actual names.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they had come about from Jairus' story, you know, it would have been Jairus, like that miracle was so we could have Jairus. If we then just had Zach and Elise as a bonus extra out of that process, I don't think their story would have had its own, like have stood on its own. And so like I look back and see God's wisdom in it needing to be its own separate process and its own separate story of how Zach and Elise then came into the world, because that could have been really tricky otherwise. So yeah, it's been one of those lessons of realizing actually we don't know everything. God's got a plan and a purpose and he knows what the future looks like. But yeah, certainly in the moment, we don't always recognize that straight off the bat.
Always like, you know, years down the track, like, oh,
yeah,
that's what God was doing.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, completely. So,
were you expecting twins?
No, we weren't.
Are they identical?
No. For anyone watching, they're not identical because one's a boy and one's a girl.
That's the only mistake I make, guys.
Yeah.
Only.
In the last podcast. Except for the gigantic one.
Figure out, except for the audio.
I meant during. During the podcast.
Oh, too funny.
Sorry, yes.
I think that is always the first question that people ask.
Everybody
twins.
asks me that question.
Oh, they're twins. Are they identical? It just like comes out.
Yeah, and depending on how tired I am, depends on how rude I am about it.
That's the same for you, isn't it? I think you said something similar on your one.
It depends, depends entirely on what mood I'm in.
Isn't it people that have known you for ages, they still call you your brother's name?
Yeah, heaps of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then it also it goes both ways. Where my brother works in a job that deals with the public, and so it depends what kind of mood he's in. If you get quite a rude response from me,
because he works at a library, right?
Yeah.
So lots of people are like, I saw you up at the library.
No, they're just like, oh, hi, Braden. What are you doing at the library? Like that.
What are you doing behind the desk?
And when I used to work in childcare as well, he'd get little kids coming up to him and talking to him, and he was like, "Who are you?"
I'm not twins with my sister. My sister and I look quite alike. We even get that. I'm we're not even twins. Yeah. So I can imagine that.
I think the other reason I asked that question is that only really I had family friends who had identical, like two boys, and they were identical twins, and I think that's the other thing. Like that was really my only real experience of twins growing up. So I think that's part of the reason why I asked.
But no, we weren't expecting twins, albeit the odds were pretty high because, you know, you're chucking 2 in, you might get 2 out.
It's kind of a thing with IVF too sometimes,
it
right?
is.
Yeah.
So Jairus was actually a twin.
Oh.
We lost his twin.
Oh, okay.
But no, we weren't necessarily, so we probably weren't expecting 2.
Yeah.
So I do remember the day when we had the ultrasound and Todd nearly passing out. He did nearly pass out. Yeah. But
Was that because someone was trying to jab him with the needle?
Yeah, no. So yeah, they're a little blessing. Actually, it was really funny. The following day after we found out we had twins, I don't know whether people, like, I'm not really into signs at all and things, but like the following day I got onto the train to go to work and there was a $5 note sitting at the top of the stairs. And so I kind of picked it up and called out in the cabin to say, hey, has anyone lost your $5 note or whatever? No one answered it, so I pocketed the $5 note.
Yeah.
No one, like you were ignored?
Yeah, like no one kind of responded and they're
like,
like,
who's this
nah,
crazy-
not mine, whatever. I'm like, okay.
Who's this crazy
So I
lady?
took the $5 note. Anyway, when I got on the train to come home from work that day, as I got onto the train, there was a $5 note at the top of the stairs.
What?
And so I picked it up and I was like, has anyone lost their $5 note? No. So I put it in my purse and I sat down and literally as I sat down, it was almost like an audible voice I heard, I will provide everything you need.
Wow.
And I was like, we got this. We're okay.
Yeah,
Because Jairus was a really sick kid. Like he actually like died on us a couple of times. Like I walked into the hospital with him not breathing. Like he was a pain.
Stop dying.
Yeah, he was a nightmare he would go down for his afternoon nap and he just would go grey and not really wake up.
Like a breathing
Like
thing?
asthma-y, not breathing.
Wow.
And so he was full on. And so
Wow.
then to find out we were having twins, it was just like, I don't know how we're going to, I don't know if I've got capacity for that. Yeah. But I just felt God say, you're right. You got it. I'll provide. I'm like, no, and he has ever since.
And you've got your 2 $5 notes.
Yeah.
You got $10 on
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And you know, and again, I'm really not into signs, but like since I've stopped working, $5 every month on payday, I find.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah. It's freaky as. Yep.
Wow.
I know. So I'm like, okay, well, regardless, bonus. God, if that's just you giving me a gentle nudge to go, I got you, don't stress. I'll take it.
Wow. Why do you say you're not into signs?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm a bit like...
Is that why you're not good at directions?
Okay, that was a good one.
Oh, if you're close enough, I'll give you a high five for that. See, that's funny.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's very good.
Yeah, sorry. Why are you not into signs?
I don't know. I think, don't test God.
Okay. Oh, yeah,
Like,
show
don't-
me the sign.
Yeah, don't sit, like, you don't go, show me a sign because that's going to be the answer to my prayer. But I'll take it, like.
Of
Yeah, and I
course.
think
If
it's
that's
always,
how he wants to, I don't know.
it's always upon reflection. I feel
Yeah.
like is the most helpful.
Yeah,
Rather
also
than
not
looking
expecting
for stuff, it's
I'm
you
not going looking for it.
yeah, you look back and you see the hand of God a
Yeah.
lot clearer than
Yeah.
at the time, especially.
Yeah.
I think.
And I hadn't actually noticed.
Yeah.
It was only that Todd sort of said the other day, he's like, you found $5 again? I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you have found like $5 like every month. And I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of have. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's why I'm not really. Yeah, don't test God.
that
Don't say,
makes
show
sense.
me a sign, because
Yeah.
then you'll start looking
So
for
give
things
me-
and you'll see things that are maybe not necessarily there.
Show me the sign to give me what I want, God.
But I'm kind of happy for the little nudge of encouragement.
Yeah.
that
Well, it
he
is cool
gives
how
us.
often like controls coming up and how often God's kind of stepped in there and give you a little nudge.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with you, sorry, but I'm saying it's really interesting now that you said, like, and I'd like to talk about your career for a little bit, but you're saying that you're kind of on a sabbatical kind of thing at the moment,
Yeah.
and that it's happening for you right now. That you're finding the $5 now that you've
Yep.
because you're not really
Because
totally employed at the moment.
No, I'm
but-
not. And I am on a sabbatical. Like I've been quite intentional of trying to give some space and some time, like not just rushing into things. Trying not to control the process and see what God's actually got for me.
Put it on 2-speed,
Yeah.
2x.
which is really challenging for me. Like it's really hard.
Okay.
So yeah, God's little reminders of, I got you. Don't worry. You're good. Is kind of helping me to breathe into releasing control and letting him decide what's next for my life.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because, I was in public service for like 20 years before having this break. So this is a big change for me.
Just before we get into that, though, a question I always like to ask people that are on the podcast that are parents: what has God taught you through being a parent?
Or that's like part 3.
I'm quite happy to do many parts there. Yeah, because this is part 2.
That's
just a double up.
Yeah, that's a part in and of itself, I think. In short, I think kids hold a mirror up to you sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And certainly for me in this last couple of weeks, like just God's conviction because of interacting with teenage kids has been really interesting. I think that love for someone, like to love your children, gives you a bit of a glimpse of how Father God loves us, so I just think that's helped to create, even more of an understanding of God's love for me. So many, every day I learn something because of my kids. And they're just awesome. Like we're really lucky. We've got really amazing kids. But I think the one thing that Todd and I kind of talked about when we first became parents of what do we really want out of our relationship with them. And for me, it was I just want them to be able to talk to me and tell me anything, like no judgment, for me to have grace, to create a safe environment for them to be themselves. Like we kind of had these dreams and ambitions of what we wanted that to look like and really what I wanted our relationship to be like when they're adults. And that's kind of, so the only way I can do that for them is if I'm connected into God helping me to do that, because it's really easy to get cross and it's really easy to judge them. It's really easy to want to control them. Like as a control freak, it's really easy to go try and dictate all of that for them. So the ability to just, create boundaries and a safe space for them and to be compassionate and all of the things that God is towards us, I can only do towards them through his grace and mercy and help. So every day he teaches me something new.
Yeah. Through kids, yeah. I was reflecting on something that I think Tim Pilhartz was actually talking about on another podcast about how a lot of our culture is often outsourcing a lot of different things. Like, if you need tutoring, you get math tutoring, you go to the tutor. If you need swimming training, you go to the swim teacher. You need to go to school, you're going to school to be taught. But I think what I like about what you're saying there is that our ultimate responsibility as parents, if you are a parent, is your children. They're not someone else's responsibility. They're your number one responsibility with them.
Yeah.
And then yes, they can go and do swimming and stuff, but you're still ultimately responsible for their faith formation, how they're growing up, and how you're hopefully showing them, even in all our own sinfulness and constant mistakes as parents.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it makes sense that you're saying they hold up a mirror to you. I remember talking to another Christian guy I used to work with, and he's like, you might get a partner and you realize how selfish you are. And then I said, yeah, but wait till you have children and then you'll really see how selfish you are.
It's true.
So I just find that encouraging that you approach that in that sense, because it is you're taking ultimate responsibility for their care.
Yeah. Albeit, God has certainly given me a little bit of I won't say a kick, but I've certainly been convicted about that over the last couple of weeks of just that interesting stage, certainly for Jairus as he's coming into being a young adult of, and he's got his own faith. He was baptised this time last year.
Yeah, he was.
that what responsibility do you take, but in helping them to own their own faith and to grow in their own faith. And I guess because Todd and I were youth group leaders, we know what that looked like and what we did for other kids. But they didn't have parents teaching them about Jesus. So, we lent in really hard on that and felt responsible for that. Whereas it's like, well, actually, why are we treating our kids any differently to how we discipled those kids? Like, that's the blessing of our kids getting to have Christian parents and the joy that we get to have in sharing our faith with our own kids. So, I've been really thankful for what God's been teaching me in the last couple of weeks around, we've got all these ambitions on how we do life together as a family and what that looks like. But actually, how do we do our faith together as a family, and what does that actually look like? So, constant journey.
No, I just appreciate the way you think about it. I think let's talk about career, because I know it's been a really big part of you. Been a bit of a big kahuna in government circles.
There's a few of them.
There's a few kahunas. I just like that saying, big kahuna. I don't know why. Does it mean like? I don't even know what kahuna means.
It's a fish, isn't
it? Is it?
A big fish.
Oh, like it's a king of the sea kind of thing.
I thought it was. I don't know. Now you're making me doubt that.
I reckon you might be onto that.
Kahuna. It sounds like a kind of a fish that resides around Hawaii or something.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
You said you didn't do event management for very long.
No, I didn't. So moved to Sydney. I worked for like a pharmaceutical company. Then I worked for like a property development company for a little while. And then when we were trying to have kids, like Todd's like, you need to get into government because they have the best maternity leave provisions, because at that time there weren't maternity leave provisions outside of the public service. So I kind of just jumped into anything that I found. So, started off as an admin assistant in the medical research and science research space, and just fell in love with it. Like, I was like made for the public service, really. Loved the thinking. I loved the strategy, trying to solve problems. So I went on and did some more study in public policy, and then kind of just worked my way through.
As a master's?
I did a master's in public policy.
Right.
And then some more study after that.
What was that?
I did a graduate diploma in public sector management, and I'm doing a master's of human resource management.
You got now?
Yeah, I've just started because I'm like, if I'm on a sabbatical, I may as well do something with my time.
That's not really sabbatical, is it?
No, it's not really. Oh yeah, I did my master's in public policy. Like, I fell pregnant with Jairus in my first semester, and I graduated with carrying Zach and Elise on my hips to get my certificate.
Wow.
So,
okay.
I'm like, the sourdough didn't last very long.
No,
What does Jairus call you?
Oh, yeah. So
I
have taken up making bread because I didn't get to do that during COVID because of my job.
Yeah.
So I never had that time. So, yes, I've been doing bread. And so he did yell out to his girlfriend the other day, "Oh, do you want some of Mum's midlife crisis bread?" I'm like, mate, I think we both said simultaneously, "That's mean." But true.
What, you and his girlfriend said,
we both
were
like, "That's mean." I'm like, "Oh, but he's not wrong."
They're the ones that hurt the most.
Yeah, it's true.
But they're also the ones that, like, you laugh at the most, the truth.
Oh,
like, even
the
the science one, because the truth is there.
I'm like,
That's
I'm owning my bread making because 100% this is. I might be freaking out a little bit, but I can knead the dough, and that helps me to get rid of my heebie-jeebies.
Oh,
yeah.
jeez.
Anyway.
I was just watching Madagascar recently. He's like, Maurice, you have heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's where I get. Yeah.
Giant pansies.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, let's get back to...
Yes. Yeah. So I've been working in government public policy for nearly 20 years.
What do you love about it?
What I love about it? I ultimately love to serve. And so public service, if you embrace the job as it is it's meant to be, you are there to serve the public and the greater good.
Right.
And it is not about one person like, there are things that I have worked on and there's things that other people have worked on, but you don't ever get a statue built, no public servant is ever known really for something that is delivered to the public. And I like that. I like that it's a collective effort.
But kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah, behind the scenes to serve. I do love trying to solve problems. Like I love seeing a need and trying to figure out, well, how do we meet that need? How do we be creative about that? How do you solve that problem? And sometimes you get a long time to get to do that, so you get to do it well. And sometimes you're in the midst of a crisis, and so you're having to do quick decision-making policy on the run. But I get to, it's the problem-solving aspect, but for hopefully a greater good of an outcome. Yeah.
We were talking before we were recording about how it almost seems like a little bit of a lost art or a lost scenario amongst government.
Yeah.
Is that really good policy can impact a lot of people and produce really great outcomes for a lot of people. Is that part of the reason you like doing it? Is because you're serving. I'm not saying that where you work is small, but it's proportionally to the rest of the state, for example, it's really small. Yeah. So then you can make these changes and decisions to impact a lot of people.
So I've been lucky to work in both like the medical research space in particular. Super interesting. But, the decisions that we're making and the policies that we're setting, like the outcome of that for the masses is quite, amazing. Like one of the pieces of work I was on like biobanking. So every time someone goes and gets their blood taken, we put a change through to the consent form so biospecimens can be banked, and we built a biobank because that then enables researchers to be able to do research en masse, all de-identified, anonymous, to be able to try and work through, well, what are we seeing happening to our population, so we can be on the front foot of making sure that we've got care or provision in place because we can see where the health of the population is moving to. Like that's, can be revolutionary and in order to set things up to support, our state. So I don't know if you saw in the papers kind of last week, the week before, they've just launched the establishment of a viral vector manufacturing facility out in Western Sydney. And that's a project that I worked on kind of 3 years ago to get that started and off the ground. And that, that means that we're not reliant on India and other countries to be able to produce vaccinations or to be able to produce medicine. We can actually do that here now. Like that has huge implications. Like during COVID, we were able to produce our own vaccinations. We didn't have to necessarily rely on the supply coming in from somewhere else. That has a massive impact on the public. Education, trying to support how schools operate, the support for teachers, how education's delivered to, there's 800,000 students in the state. Like, wow. That's, an education for a kid, that's their life trajectory. Like you want to kind of get that stuff right. And it does, and it's not always working. So there's always things that need to be kind of reviewed and improved. And wicked problems. Like if you think of homelessness, certainly youth homelessness, and they leave kind of out of home care. It's kind of something that Todd and I have been wrestling with at home in our spare time of how can we do better? What could that look like? So it's different. If you see a problem and you've got the ability to try and think differently about it to try and come up with a solution, just think instead of saying
that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So, I agree with you on that a lot.
So that's what I love about public service is that you get to participate in doing that.
Okay. You mentioned that you worked in medical area first, but then you moved to education. What was the reason for that?
Yeah. So my kind of mentor boss at the time was like, you've been in the kind of the health medical research space for a long time. You're probably more of a career public servant than because there's only so far you can go in the medical space when you don't have a medical degree. It'd be good for me to be exposed to something else. So she'd kind of arranged for me to get a secondment to education for 12 months.
It's the comment is when you just move over.
Yeah, you kind of move over
Okay,
into like a role for a period of time, but with the view that I'd end up moving back. I think I was in the role for 6 weeks and then COVID happened. And so at that time, Kerry had sort of said, well, she was negotiating with the Secretary of Education of I either need her back or she stays and is then the conduit from health to education to tackle COVID. And so I ended up staying at education and leading that first response to COVID. And then after that, I got an ongoing job at education and stayed. Stayed for a few years.
Can I ask you, probably ask you, the final question is upcoming, but where do you think that drive to continue to try and make those changes comes from?
Isn't that just what Jesus did? Like,
yeah, right.
I think I said before, we've been hanging out in Matthew. When you watch what Jesus did, he just came and he saw the poor, he saw the sick, saw the hungry, saw the broken. He saw all the problems and he was the answer to those problems. And so, if I want to share Jesus's love and if I want to see his hand work in this world, then use me. If I've got the gifts, if I can think through and solve the problems, but it's like I can only do that if God helps me. But I can't turn a blind eye. I can't cross the street and walk on the other side and walk past the brokenness of this world because Jesus certainly didn't. And so I just think, if I can, why wouldn't I?
I appreciate that answer. I really value your honesty and openness in this way. I think we've actually got a little bit more than we did from the last episode. So let's ask the final question. Unless there's anything we should ask, do you think, Brandon, before the final question? Oh, you always get this one. How did you end up coming to Soul Revival? I don't think we asked that question.
Oh, yeah.
You always pick me up on that. That's what I was saying.
So, funny story. Peter and Vanessa Sab, who some people might know from Sunday morning. So we were at the Vineyard Church together. Another random story, we actually built our house together. So if you ever want to come and see funky house of two young couples trying to figure out how we're going to live with some kids, we kind of came up with a solution to our problem.
You did a duplex together?
Yeah, we did a duplex together. So Pete is really good friends with Michael Dicker, who some people might know. He was, so he spoke at Week Away about 9 years ago, it would have been. He was going to be speaking at Soli's, I think before he was due to then speak at Week Away kind of back then. And so Peter and Vanessa were going to see Michael because, Pete and Michael grew up together. So we just tagged along. And then we never left. So, yeah.
That was on a Saturday night, I'm guessing, at the time?
That was on a Saturday night, and I think it was just after you moved to the factory.
Oh, okay, right.
So, I don't know whether that's about 9 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it was about that. I think we had that confirmed at the AGM the other night, and it was about 9 years ago we were at the factory.
Yeah. So that's how we came along and, felt at home.
Oh. I'd certainly love to have you here at our church. Not our church, at this church, I should say. Sorry. Sorry, you were going to you had a question before final question?
Not really.
Okay.
I can ask one.
I'm not forcing you to. I just want, have we covered everything that you think we needed to cover before we begin to land the plane, so to speak?
I think we talked about this a little bit last time. I don't want to open a big thing right before Joel asks the last question. But as someone who identifies as like maybe introverted, how did you find that shift of coming to a new church? Was that something?
Yeah. So I am definitely an introvert. surrounded by extroverts in my family, albeit I think Zach's a little bit of a kindred spirit with me.
Yeah.
I find it really hard. Yeah, if I'm really honest.
Yeah.
I'm not a massive fan of crowds of people. I'm not really a massive fan of starting new conversations, which is also really interesting in my workplace because it's kind of required of me. But you take that on as your role, not necessarily. Yeah, they're not. Certainly on the weekends, I'm pretty spent as far as I just want to hide in a hole and be on my own. So that was tricky, and I even find each week a little bit tricky, like that transition from the service into dinner.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I could just bolt for the door and exit. I think I'm really lucky that my husband is like a people person.
Yeah.
And so I hang on to him a little bit probably tight to go, great, just focus, get food, sit at a table and hope someone comes and sits with us to talk.
Yeah.
So I do, I actually find it hard, but I think I have learned, so where we talk about lessons of even that our kids show us, I have learned that being in community is better for me than being on my own.
Yeah.
Because when I'm on my own, I'm vulnerable. It's easy to get distracted from God. It's easy to not, I think sometimes it's seeing God work in other people is the encouragement too for your faith. And so I know that being in community is a good thing.
Yeah.
And therefore, no, that sounds terrible. Sometimes it's just something I need to persevere in doing because I know that it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I know it's a good thing for my kids. And so they need me to be an example of, you know what, even just to be there to serve, even if it's not like maybe I'm not necessarily taking away something from it. It's not actually about what I need, but actually being there is good.
And being uncomfortable.
And being uncomfortable is good because God gets... And every week I walk away having had a conversation with someone that I'm like, that's cool. Like I've learned something, I've connected with someone, I've been encouraged by something, or I've been able to share a bit of my journey that's been of an encouragement. Like never, ever have I walked out and gone, well, that was a waste of time. Like, or I wish I hadn't done that. Told you, Todd. We should have just left. Like, never, ever.
I feel that every time I have a conversation with you, which are reasonably sporadic, often a week away, but every time I'm having a walk away from having a conversation with you or Todd, that's how I feel.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you. Yeah. What's your top tip as an introvert for other introverts?
Well, I don't know if I've got one. What I'm talking about with my son Zach at the moment, who's a dancer. So he spins because he's a dancer.
He's very accomplished dancer.
So he has to spot, like you find a spot on the wall and that's what you stay focused on because then when you're spinning you don't get dizzy and that helps you. And so because he's a bit of an introvert too, it's like what's your spot? And so for me in my transitions, it's like, okay, at the end of the service, my spot is food. Get in the line for the food and just focus on get in the line. Because if I'm in the line, then I won't leave the line and I get my food. It's that turning from the food to what next. Yeah. It's like I've already pre-planned. I'm heading for that table. Like that's my spot. And I don't need to worry about what's in my periphery of all the people. I can see a chair and that's the one I'm sitting in.
Yeah.
And God will figure out the rest. Like I'm not looking for a person. I'm not looking for someone safe to sit. So I just spot and then trust that God will figure out the rest or whatever else. So I think it's for me, I have to go small steps. But
healthy triggers
rather than, and never ever is the spot allowed to be the exit door.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's not an option.
I think that's helpful.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I also find it very hard to understand because we discussed before that I was talking to Grace, from Ride at our AGM. I was like, I'll just talk all day. Yeah. And I'll feel tired and then I want to go hang out. I'll go hang out with people. I'm like, I don't feel tired anymore.
Yeah.
I feel energized.
But it's an interesting. I've had lots of conversations with people who are introverted or maybe just new or it's an unfamiliar territory and that time where you get your food and turn around for people can be the most stress-inducing part of the entire
100%.
experience.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like the
100%.
turn around, and then there's just like
Movement
chaos and movement and
That's why it's like empty chair, go for it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like I know and I can trust that there are people like Joel at church. Like, you know, like God put us in relationship with each other for a reason because I actually don't need to instigate the conversation because somebody else needs to.
Yeah.
So I don't need to because I'm quite happy to sit there by myself. Yeah. But you need to because it's what brings you energy. And so I'm like, over to you.
It's actually, the ball is in your court.
That's exactly what happened when we had a chat. Maybe was it 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I just like I saw you and Todd. And I'm like, hey Karen, let's go sit there. And then Karen couldn't even talk because she didn't have a voice.
She didn't talk.
Anyway.
Yep.
Well, that helps me though. As we just said, I'm an extrovert, and I'm like, what? Which is so funny because I don't see myself as that. It's just your natural inclination, I suppose. Okay, last question. We have gone over vast. Yeah. You know, you grew up in the Wild West of Adelaide. And now you've moved here and you've spent, like you said, 20 years on public policy and things like that. And it's really been cool to hear about lots of things that God has spoken to you through your life, and especially, like I said, thank you for your openness and honesty, especially about Jairus and Zach and Elizabeth. Elizabeth with
an S.
Okay, cool. I thought that's what it was. I got that right.
Called Elizabeth.
And Zacchaeus, not Zachary.
How do you say it?
I knew about Zacchaeus. I didn't know.
Yeah. Is it Elizabeth? Did you say it with an S?
Well, when you read the Bible and Elizabeth, who was Mary's, like you say Elizabeth, but actually the original spelling's with an S.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Oh, I didn't see. I learned that. There you go. So we looked at all that stuff in your life. What do you know now as a Christian that you wish you knew when you're a younger Christian?
I think if I could go back and tell my younger self anything, God's big enough to hold anything you've got. Like I don't need to control it. I don't need to hold on to it. I don't need to be the responsible one. I don't need to be the sensible one all the time, because you know what? Actually, God's a lot bigger, stronger, mightier than I can ever be, and He can hold it. And so for me in that picture, I wish that as a kind of a teenager, I knew what it was like to sit in the embrace of my Father's arms and love and comfort.
Well, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense of kind of the things that you've talked about is a lot to do with control and maybe thinking I have to take these on myself. Can't let them go.
Yep.
But I can see also that how God's taught you to let go, and I think I'm just thinking about your sabbatical and your bread making and stuff, and then that's just another time where He's doing that. And like, isn't it just the process of sanctification? Like He takes you as this sinful human being, and however long He chooses for you to be on earth, He's continually working on you.
Yep.
And I think it's the theme of the podcast that we talk about, like on all these Chip Lunch podcasts, but also I think you've really accentuated that today. I have heaps of respect for you. I love the way that you continue reflecting. That's the other thing. You talked about before that why wouldn't you take something and try and make it better? I think you're doing that with yourself as well. And I think that's what God wants us to do.
I think that's what God does for us.
Yeah, He's doing it for us. That's right. Yeah. So that's why I find I've really enjoyed this podcast.
Good.
And it's really for the second time. But it's really encouraging as well. That's what I was going to say. And again, this is why we do this podcast.
Yeah.
I always like to leave final words for Braden.
Oh, I think it was excellent getting to do this again, and
we got extra
traversed over similar paths, but also gone down different rabbit warrens than last time as well, which is really great. Yeah. And I think you've also obviously had time to process what we talked about last time and had more reflections on that, which is really lovely. Yeah.
No, it's been a pain for Joel, but I think it was a real blessing, actually.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, so I've been really
If it's going to be a
thankful.
real blessing and we're going to bless other people and God's blessing you, then
Win-win.
we can deal with it.
We can deal with it.
One mistake in 400 dollars.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been extremely special. Thank you for taking
Thanks.
the time, the second time, and I hope you're able to find your way home easily.
Thank you, Google Maps.
Yeah, you must be cheering since that's been invented.
Yep.
Very cool. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you for anyone and everyone listening and watching. We really appreciate it, and we always like to finish with a one way.
One way.
Cool.